Hey, good evening, Midwest Survivor. Time for dinner chat. First off, let me say thank you to our 28 subscribers. The channel keeps growing every day. We keep gaining a subscriber here and there, and I want to say thank you for that. We are 22 away from our big giveaway. Once we reach 50 subscribers, we're going to have a giveaway where everybody will win the first 50 subscribers will have a prize, and then there'll also be a drawing for first place, second place, and third place. So be sure to check out the channel for that. Be sure to check out the community. I've been posting things in the community constantly, multiple times a day, asking questions. You know, it's very important in the healing process that people talk and open up. I want to really also push for Midwest Survivor coaching. It's not about surviving, it's learning how to thrive. So if you're wanting to book a coaching session with me, please reach out to me on the channel. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Brandon Payne, Brandon M. Payne author, or Midwest Survivor 8426. You can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, and X as well. So please reach out to me. I really want to help overcome, whatever's going on in your life, and help you heal and help you not just survive but learn how to thrive. So tonight's dinner chat is when everything somehow becomes your fault. So have you ever walked into a conversation knowing somebody hurt you, and you walked out somehow apologizing to them? They yelled at you, but you made them angry. They lied to you, but you shouldn't have questioned them. They insulted you, but you were too sensitive. They broke a promise, but your expectations were unreasonable. They accused you of something, but somehow you ended up defending your entire character. And you eventually start wondering, how does everything somehow become my fault? So tonight's dinner chat is on this topic. How does everything become my fault? And so I want you to grab dinner, grab your coffee, grab a glass of tea, pull up a chair, and let's talk about it. So there is a difference between responsibility and blame. First, let's establish something important. Healthy people both require accountability from both sides of the relationship. Sometimes a person really is wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes we misunderstand people. Sometimes we react badly. Sometimes we say things we shouldn't say. Being emotionally healthy doesn't mean believing you're never responsible for anything. The problem begins when responsibility consistently travels in one direction. When one person is explaining, when one person is apologizing, when one person is changing, when one person is defending themselves. Meanwhile, the other person's behavior rarely gets examined. And that is not mutual accountability. That is a pattern and a cycle. So there's something that happens in a conversation, and that is called blame shifting. Imagine that somebody speaks to you disrespectfully, and you say, "I don't appreciate the way that you spoke to me." Instead of addressing that behavior, they respond, "Well, if you hadn't irritated me, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have talked to you like that." I want you to notice what happened. The conversation was originally, "Why did you speak to me disrespectfully?" Now the conversation has become and turned, "Why did you irritate me?" Their behavior and responsibility and accountability has completely disappeared from the discussion, and suddenly you are the villain. That is blame shifting. Clear and simple. Instead of taking responsibility for their response, they redirect attention towards something supposedly that you did to cause it, which in reality probably had nothing to do with you at all. A common phrase that you will hear is, "Look what you made me do." This can become one of the most painful, damaging, hard statements that anybody can make. You made me do it. You made me yell. You made me insult you. You made me break something. You made me lie. You made me say those things. You made me lose control. No. Another person's behavior can absolutely affect our emotions. Someone can frustrate us. Someone can disappoint us. Someone can hurt us. Someone can make us angry. But adults are still responsible for what they choose to do with those emotions. Anger is an emotion. Disrespect is a behavior. Those two are not the same thing. You can be angry and still choose how you can respond. Your reaction becomes the entire story. Here's another common pattern. Someone repeatedly pushes your buttons. They criticize, they accuse, they provoke, they dismiss, they dig up the past. Eventually you become frustrated, you raise your voice, and suddenly the entire conversation becomes, look how angry you are. And nobody is discussing what happened during the previous 30 minutes. Suddenly, the focus and the spotlight is entirely on your reaction. Now, does that necessarily mean that your reaction is automatically okay? No, it doesn't. We are responsible for how we react. But accountability should include the entire interaction, not just one little snippet or moment. That's the most convenient for one person's argument. There are two things that can be true. You may regret how you reacted, and the behavior that contributed to the conflict may still need to be addressed. You start over explaining everything. When you're constantly blamed, something can start happening. You become an attorney defending your own life. You explain where you went. You explain what you said. You explain what you meant. You explain why you were late. You explain who called you. You explain why somebody followed you online. You explain why you didn't answer immediately. You explain your facial expression. You explain your tone. You explain things that you never imagined you needed to explain. And eventually you aren't communicating anymore. You're presenting a defense, and that is exhausting. A healthy relationship shouldn't require you to constantly prove you're innocent of something. The goalposts keep moving. Sometimes you answer the accusation, then another one appears, and then another one. You prove that wasn't true. Now the issue changes. The story changes. The narrative changes. You explain that. Then something from 6 months ago gets dug up and brought into the conversation. You address that. Then something from 3 years ago gets redug up. And eventually you realize there is no answer that ends the argument, because the conversation isn't necessarily moving towards a resolution. It's moving toward finding something that you can be blamed for. And that's why some arguments never end. You're trying to solve the issue, but the other dynamic is trying to determine who gets assigned the blame. Those are completely different goals. Your past mistakes become permanent evidence. Maybe you've made mistakes, and everybody has. Maybe you lied once. Maybe you handled something poorly. Maybe you broke someone's trust. Maybe you said something hurtful. Healthy accountability means acknowledging that, working to repair that damage. But accountability does not mean one mistake becomes a lifetime permission slip for someone to mistreat you and hate you and yell at you and scream at you. If every disagreement ends with, remember what you did blank, then the past is never resolved. It's being stored as ammunition to be fired against you. Forgiveness does not require forgetting, but reconciliation cannot survive when yesterday's mistakes are constantly being used to justify today's behavior. Eventually, you start blaming yourself. This is where the pattern becomes very damaging and destructive. At first, they're blaming you. Eventually, you start doing it for them. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe I really am difficult. Maybe everything would be peaceful if I just kept quiet. And that's dangerous, because you begin editing yourself to present someone else's reaction. You stop raising concerns. You stop asking questions. You stop expressing disappointment. You stop setting boundaries. Not because everything is okay, but because you have become exhausted from what happens whenever you speak. Peace and silence are not the same thing, and this is very important as well. Sometimes we say, well, we haven't argued in weeks. Things are getting better. Maybe they are. But ask another question. Why haven't you argued? Is it because communication improved? Or maybe it's because you stopped talking about what bothers you. Those are completely different situations. If peace requires one person to suppress everything they think, feel, that's not genuine peace, that's silence. Healthy peace allows uncomfortable conversations. Families can do this too as well. Blame shifting just doesn't appear in romantic partners. It happens in families. One person finally says something in this family isn't healthy, and suddenly that person becomes the problem. Why are you the one causing drama? Why can't you let things go? Why are you bringing the past up? Why are you tearing the family apart? But here's the question. Did the question about the problem create the problem? Or did talking about it simply expose something that was already there? Sometimes families become so invested in keeping everything looking normal that the person who acknowledges the dysfunction becomes more threatening than the dysfunction itself. And it happens in churches and organizations and in workplaces. The same thing happens when somebody raises legitimate concerns about leadership. Instead of asking, is what they're saying true? People ask, why are they criticizing leadership? Why are they being divisive? Why can't they forgive? Why are they causing problems? But questioning someone's motives does not answer the original concern. Healthy organizations should be able to examine legitimate criticism without automatically attacking the person raising it. Accountability shouldn't depend on someone's title. So stop accepting responsibility that isn't yours. One of the most important, changing, dynamic things that you can do, learn, and start implementing is what belongs to me and what belongs to somebody else. Your words belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your reactions belong to you. Your mistakes belong to you. Take responsibility for those things. But their words belong to them. Their choices belong to them. Their reactions belong to them. Their mistakes belong to them. You don't have to carry both sides of the relationship. So I want you to open your mind and ask yourself one question. The next time everything somehow becomes your fault, ask yourself, what was the original issue? Go back to the very beginning. Maybe the conversation started because somebody lied. Stay right there. Maybe because it started because somebody broke a boundary. Stay right there. Maybe it started because somebody spoke disrespectfully. Stay right there. Don't allow 10 unrelated accusations erase the original issue. You can acknowledge your own behavior without abandoning the conversation that you originally needed to have. You might say, I'm willing to talk about my reaction, but we still need to address what started this conversation. And that is accountability without accepting misplaced blame. Healthy people can say a lot of good things. Healthy people can say, I was wrong. This is one of the biggest differences. A healthy relationship aren't relationships where nobody makes mistakes. They're relationships where people can eventually say, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I misunderstood you. I overreacted. I hurt you. I'm sorry. And then they work toward changing the behavior. No 20-minute defense. No immediate counterattack. No, I'm sorry, but just accountability. Imagine how many more relationships would change if people became more concerned with repairing the relationship than winning the argument. And you don't have to win every argument either. And this applies to all of us. It's easy to listen to dinner chat like this and immediately think about somebody else. But ask yourself, do I blame shift sometimes? And as Midwest Survivor, honestly and openly, I do. I blame shift as well. When somebody tells me I've hurt them, do I listen? I try to, but sometimes I don't? Or do I immediately explain why they're wrong? Sometimes I do. Do I apologize? I try to, but sometimes I don't get it right. Can I accept criticism? For the most part, yes, but sometimes it hits me the wrong way. Can I acknowledge that someone else's feelings are legitimate even when I remember the situation differently? I do my best to, but sometimes it's hard. Healing isn't only to recognize unhealthy behavior in other people. It's also learning to recognize the unhealthy patterns and behaviors that are within ourselves. And that is how cycles get broken and stay broken forever. So think about this. If everything somehow becomes your fault, pay attention to the pattern and the cycle. You don't have to accept responsibility for another adult's choices. You just to keep the peace. You can honestly say, I was wrong about this part without saying everything was my fault. You can apologize for your reaction while still addressing what happened before your reaction. You can take accountability without accepting blame that does not belong to you. And you can stop spending your life defending yourself against accusations that constantly change. Remember, accountability asks, what did I do? Blame asks, who can I make responsible and who can I put responsibility on? Healthy relationships need accountability. They don't need a permanent defendant. So here's tonight's dinner chat question. And I want you to open your mind and ask yourself this question. Have you ever entered a conversation because someone hurt you? And how? And somehow ended up being the person that apologized. And more importantly, how did you recognize the pattern? So what happened when you finally stopped accepting responsibility for everything? Please share your thoughts in the comments. You know, someone reading and listening to you talk about what you went through may be the very answer that they need to start their journey of healing and restoration and recovery in their own life. Because it's not about surviving, it's about thriving. So someone may be reading your experience tonight and say, maybe everything isn't my fault. So Midwest Survivor 8426, remember, real talk, real healing, real life. We're going to go from surviving to thriving. Take care, have a good evening, and remember, be healthy, get healthy, stay healthy, be strong, get strong, stay strong. I'll see you tomorrow morning for Breakfast Bits. Have a good evening.